Okay, let's jump right into this explainer and completely reframe everything you thought you knew about how our interconnected, globalized world was actually built. When we look around at the modern world, with its massive supply chains dropping packages at our doors and beaming data to our screens in milliseconds, it's so easy to think of this as a purely modern technological phenomenon. But the roots of this global network, they stretch back way, way further than the internet. And the true architects of the whole system are definitely not who you'd expect.
So, who really built the modern global supply chain? I mean, you'd naturally assume it was military generals orchestrating huge campaigns across empires, right? Or maybe early corporate giants moving cargo across the oceans. And sure, they absolutely played a part. But the true pioneers, the folks who built the very first truly resilient global networks of information and culture, are far more unexpected.
We're going to break this down into 4 quick parts today. First, the 5 logistics vectors. Second, monks and information flow. Third, the Jesuit global network. And finally, the logistics of the word. Starting off with Section 1, the 5 logistics vectors. To really wrap our heads around the global supply chain, we first have to look at the primary action vectors that have driven human society over the last 5 millennia, along with the 4 internal drifts of supply chain management, which are material, information, financial, and commercial flows. Think about the fundamental contrast here. Traditional military logistics is all about moving troops and material, stuff that is usually meant to be consumed or, well, destroyed. But religious logistics, it was meticulously designed for the exact opposite, to preserve texts and transmit knowledge globally. And here's a crazy fact about the material evolution of all this. The two actually overlapped. For instance, the advanced metallurgical skills that monks developed to cast those massive, beautiful church bells, that exact tech actually provided the foundation for Western gun and cannon production, which literally shifted the global balance of power.
When someone says logistics, your brain probably goes straight to something highly mechanical, maybe a World War II manual covering stock control, shipping, or port ops. And while it's totally true that military requirements heavily influenced private business, that industrial nuts and bolts view is only one piece of a much larger puzzle.
In reality, history shows us that logistics developed through 5 primary action vectors: military, economic, political, religious, and cultural. Globalization actually relies on all 5 of these simultaneously. But today, we're zooming in on the most surprising one, and arguably the most foundational one for our modern information age, the religious vector.
Moving right along to Section 2, monks and information flow. Let's look at how medieval monks essentially became the fundamental architects of our earliest information supply chains. Because when the Roman Empire fell and all that traditional infrastructure just crumbled, the preservation of knowledge didn't happen by accident. It required an intensely organized logistical effort.
Historical accounts literally describe how monks worked in the scriptorium till their eyes were glazed over, their backs bent, their fingers stiff. They were driven by this incredible singular mission, that posterity may learn. While conquerors out there only knew how to fight and plunder, these monks were acting as the ultimate agents of cultural transmission. They were manually, painstakingly hand-copying the Bible, classical culture, basically the entire dataset of human history, day in and day out.
But, to build a reliable network, you need stable nodes. Enter the Cluniac reforms in the 10th century. The game changer here was freeing these monasteries from the messy political tangles of local secular control, like the nobles who just wanted to exploit religion for land and money. By doing that, the church created highly focused, independent hubs dedicated strictly to worship and the preservation of knowledge.
Just to grasp the sheer scale of this operation, check out this number, 20,000. The number of these monasteries, which were essentially early data centers, exploded from just about 1,000 in the 6th century to over 20,000 by the 15th century. Boom! Just like that, you have this incredibly vast, interconnected web across Europe, quietly holding the intellectual infrastructure of civilization together.
Okay, Section 3, the Jesuit global network. Building right on top of those monastic foundations, the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits, took this religious vector and just completely leveled it up. They actively expanded it into an unparalleled, ultra-resilient global network of knowledge that went way beyond the borders of Europe. The Jesuits operated as these incredibly vital brokers of information. They were creating brand new networks connecting Asia, the Americas, and Europe. And navigating those stormy seas and deep civilizational divides required some serious supply chain resilience.
To make sure their data actually survived the ocean, they famously sent 3 copies of every single letter on 3 completely different ships. Talk about building redundancies into a network centuries before cloud backups were a thing.
It's honestly like watching a massive tech startup scale up. They opened their first college in 1548, founded the rigorous Roman college by 1551, and then totally embraced the Gutenberg printing press in the 16th century to push their findings out there. They were laying down a conceptual and logistical foundation that eerily mirrors how data spreads on the modern internet.
And that brings us to Section 4, the logistics of the word. How did this 2,000-year logistical mission actually deliver information to the masses? I mean, how did we get from a remote corner of the globe all the way into the hands of an everyday reader looking at their daily Bible readings?
Well, they managed what was basically a flawless end-to-end supply chain. First, missionaries recorded these thrilling eyewitness reports from distant, legendary places. Second, those letters traversed massive global trade routes back to Europe. Third, the information was rapidly mass-produced using that Gutenberg press. And finally, those accounts were devoured by a super-hungry European public. Honestly, it was the 16th century equivalent of watching a live feed from the Mars rover.
So why does all this ancient logistics stuff matter to us right now? Well, today, military and economic leaders treat information as the 5th dimension of global security and strategy, right alongside land, sea, air, and space. We all rely on this interconnected internet vector that at its very core uses the exact same cultural and religious vectors of communication that those early networks pioneered. Gathering, moving, and protecting info is still the ultimate strategic advantage.
Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating thought to close on. The next time you instantly pull up an article or a video on your phone, remember you are tapping into a legacy built by stiff-fingered monks in freezing scriptoriums and seafaring Jesuits crossing perilous oceans. They really were the hidden architects of globalization. And it totally begs the question, if these quiet, unexpected groups built the logistical foundations of our modern world, what hidden systems and unknown pioneers are quietly building the networks of tomorrow? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer today. Keep asking questions and always keep looking for the hidden structures shaping our world.